Thank you to Card Market for sponsoring today's video. It's the best place to buy your singles online in Europe. Welcome everybody to the best decks of the week. We're going to look at a bunch of tournaments, starting off with Joe, Champ of Scotland, specimencurley, which is me. Bit of an unfortunate deck name, seeing as I lost my top 8 game. But this was my Ruby Emerald deck. Absolutely love the list. There's a deck guide coming on it very soon. If you wanted to watch my games from the tournament, you can check it out. Let's look at some of the other decks from the top 8. I think this is the perfect way to play Ruby Emerald. I think the deck is incredibly good, incredibly difficult to play though. I think in particular the mulligan is wild. I think it's the most difficult mulligan I've ever played with a deck in Disney Lorcana. But this deck has the tools to beat quicker decks by controlling the board with things like Brawl, and it also has the potential to beat those slower decks like Ruby and Sapphire with your aggressive questing like Cursed Merfolk, and then you've got cards like Super Goof and Pirate's Life to cross the line. Obviously Robin Hood Sharpshooter, the theme of this one. It's a great deck, really fun, highly recommend checking it out. In the top 16, Graham, who I did play against, really awesome list, one I wanted to highlight. 4 Fire Cannons with Doc Bold Knight being the centerpiece card in this one. When you play this character, you may discard your hand to draw 2 cards. Really good with gathering knowledge and wisdom to help cross the finish line. The Amethyst Chromacon's in there, and of course you've got the opportunity to repeat as well. I think that this is a really solid deck. I would build it in a pretty similar way. Not convinced I would go near the Captain Hook, but apart from that, I think that every card in this list looks really solid. So definitely an interesting build. I think Pascal, Captain Hook, maybe 2 cards I would consider not going for. Fire the Cannons, similarly. I'm still more of a Baboom kind of guy. But I think Fire the Cannons is good. I'm just not sure I'd personally play 4 of them. I think Tiana could also be increased in the count. There's also like Raja, I think it's called. If you have no characters in hand, no cards in hand, this can't be challenged by characters of 4 cost or less. Something like that could be interesting. I think the deck's got potential though. I personally don't think it's the best way to play aggro, but I think it's actually very solid. Into the top 16 as well, Alex Walker, who was on my stream a bit, and I gave the enchanted card with a hyper aggro deck. I did help them out with this build a little bit. Amethyst Chromacon in there is like the main difference between this list and a list that I've been playing. No Befuddles is the biggest thing I don't like about this deck. I think Befuddle's too good not to be playing 4 copies of. Onto the top 8 though, we've got Kyle Wilson on Ruby and Sapphire. Vision of the Future, 4 copies of that. Cheech is in there. Great Stone Dragon, 3 of the human Sisus, 2 Cuscos and Mufasa. Only 1 Lucky Dime. Seems a little bit outrageous. I'm not a fan of that. Emerald Steel Shift in the top 8. A deck I'm personally very interested in and will be checking out on the channel pretty soon. I think the Ursula Deceiver overall with the Storm Rage on and Strength is great. I would personally be looking at playing Sudden Chill Prince John as well, most likely. But I love the look of Chief Bogo as well. Whenever you play a Floodborn character, deal 1 damage to each opposing character. This guy quests for 2, and I think gets slept on pretty heavily. Of course, you've got Floodborns like Beast, Robin Hood, and Tinkerbell. Morph into Tinkerbell. They're playing a whole new world. Diablo, I would just play Clarabelle. Again, I've got a version of Emerald Steel coming pretty soon. We're going to be testing it on the channel in the next couple of days, so make sure you subscribe for that. Amber Emerald Aggro also made the top cut, and I have to say this deck absolutely terrified me. I think my deck was almost just auto losing to this one if I went second. Merfolk, Daisy Duck plus Under the Sea stuff basically, so it's like a more aggressive way of playing the Sing Together stuff. I have to say I think Diablo's too good in this color combination not to be playing, because you can shift it and sing Under the Sea. I kind of learned that the hard way. I actually tried testing something very similar in set 4, and a video I recorded but never got posted, unfortunately. But you just lose the mirror against the Diablo players because the Diablo is able to shift in and sing Bare Necessities. So I do think that Diablo is too good not to be playing. However, what I will say is I do think that there's a lot of merit in playing some more aggressive cards in a deck like Amber Emerald. And in fact, there was an Amber Emerald deck which won one of the tournaments we're going to be looking at, and I think we'll take a bit of a closer look at that list. But I think that this is a really good deck when going first. Into the top 4. Now, the top 4 players did split. So the top 4 players basically all finished first, if you will. Don't let Earlmeister trick you. I know what you're like, Earl. We caught you in 4K on the stream. But jokes aside, congrats to all the players in the top 4. It was a really stacked tournament. Connor here, who is on Ruby Amethyst. I think I beat Connor in Swiss, if I'm not mistaken. 3 copies of Big Elsa. Not going to lie, that seems a little bit outrageous. I actually really do like the idea of playing Big Elsa in this one. I love the fact that there's 4 copies of Elsa Fifth Spirit. I think it's a really amazing card. 3 copies of the Big Elsa seems a little bit outrageous though. Like, you're just going to end up having bricks with uninkables, I'm pretty convinced. Of course, you can shift this in on turn 6 onto this Elsa, but 3 of them with 4 B preps and 1 Sisu is a lot. Lumiere's in there for like some combos with Rafiki. I actually like the idea of the Elsa, but I think like I would always be wanting to play 4 Sisus. I think you have to play Flynn Rider in this kind of meta game with Ruby Amethyst as well. Elmeister, who beat me in the last round of Swiss, we could have ID'd, but I kind of did the big brain working out and realized that whoever won was going to get top seed, and whoever lost most likely was still going to be in the top 8, which is exactly what happened. Elmeister beat me 2-0. I got to 19 on game 1 and actually missed a couple of Diablo triggers, which I very much learnt my lesson from. And then game 2, when I went first, I probably got the mulligan wrong. But this is a 61 card deck from Elmeister. They've had really good results. Of course, a great player. I don't understand why it's 61 cards, especially when there's an Ana. I don't understand quite a lot of the things in this deck in terms of the counts of cards. I would definitely build it quite differently. Elmeister's reasoning is they just like to have lots of tech options, and perhaps this is a weakness maybe of my deck building. It's certainly a difference in philosophy in how to build a deck, because I just like having lots of 4-ofs. There's definitely going to be some cards I'm playing 1, 2, or 3 of, but I would very much like, personally, when I'm building a deck, to have more consistency. There's a few cards in here, for example, that I don't think I believe in being in the deck. Cogsworth, I don't really think that should be in here. I'm not convinced that Rafiki should be in the deck. I'm not convinced that Ana should be in there. The Mother Gothel, I'm not also that convinced by either of the Mother Gothels. The Ana, I don't think should be in there. The Emerald Chromacon, I like actually as a one-off. I think that's a really nice option. The Kit Cloud Kicker and the Lyle are 2 cards I would personally increase the count of. I think Lyle can go up to 3, and I think Kit Cloud Kicker probably 3 or 4, being inkable. I think I would play 4 Lyles if it were uninkable, as I'm sure Earl would. The Crabs are good. The Queen's Castle is solid. Only 1 copy of Queen's Castle. Not sure in terms of locations what I would go for. I haven't actually played this color combination as of yet. You're welcome. Not really convinced by. Cricky I actually like, and I think Earl kind of talked me into the Cricky quite a lot when I was talking to them about it. The Elsa I think is great. I would play more copies of Elsa. The Clarabelle I think is probably worth going for. I do think there's an argument not to play Clarabelle at all in this color combination and just try and find other ways to draw cards, and I definitely like the Ursula Sea Witch Queen. So while I really like this deck, I would definitely build it quite differently. I would be playing less cards, 1 copy of. I would probably remove quite a lot of the options in here and just try and bolster up to play 4 copies of multiple cards. I definitely think Kit Cloud Kicker, there should be more copies of it. I think Kit's amazing in this metagame. I think Elsa, there should probably be a few more copies of it. But that's just my personal opinion. Obviously, this deck's done really well for Earl, and it's clearly a very good core deck. I am a pretty big believer in Emerald Amethyst in this metagame. I'm actually just a big believer in Emerald in general. I think Emerald is actually the best color of the set, which is definitely a bit of a hot take, because I think the front runners for best decks in the community are Steel Songs and Ruby Sapphire, maybe Amber Emerald, and Emerald Amethyst are also kind of creeping into that conversation as well. But I think Emerald is the best color. I think it's really, really well positioned to do lots of things, and I do really like a lot of the cards in this deck. Like the Banzai is great. I do think the Clarabelle Shift's pretty solid as well. But yeah, pretty interesting deck. You guys know me, I love my Brooms and my Chernobogs. I'd be pretty tempted to try and play those in Queen's Castle. I will be playing Amethyst Emerald very soon, so you guys can see my list, I guess, soon enough, and we'll see if it's better or not. Up next, who beat me and knocked me out, Sean Jeffries. Sean Jeffries turned out to be a bit of a bane of my existence this weekend. This is pretty much the deck that I would say stopped me winning the tournament more than any other. I played Sean Jeffries in Swiss when we were both 3-0, and unfortunately I lost the die roll, which was the first die roll I lost of the day, I will add, and I ended up playing them again in Swiss. In the top 8, and they beat me both times. They beat me 2-1 both times. With every single game they went first, they beat me, and every single game I went first, I beat them. And I have to say, a lot of the games were very, very close against them when I went second. They did roll me a few times with the top decks, it has to be said. Their Zeus seemed to be on top of the deck every single time, but really good job to Sean Jeffries. Really interesting deck. They were saying that it's teched quite well to deal with songs. That's why Mickey Mouse is in there, for example, rather than Chernobogs and Brooms, which is probably why Earl's not playing these kinds of cards as well. Obviously, Pete's in there, which can be played multiple times. I actually love the addition of the Madam Mim Elephant. It caused me quite a few problems. Lawrence, Benja. I think Benja is a phenomenal option for these mid-range steel decks because there's a lot of Ruby and Sapphire decks doing the rounds. Added to that, Amber Steel Songs players are playing Lanterns at the moment. So I would even see an argument to increase the count of Benja to 4. 4 Fire the Cannons as well seems like a lot, but you can certainly see why my deck with Diablos struggle to deal with this, particularly when going second. They've got Fire the Cannons, they've got Elsa. Elsa also, when I was going second, was able to deal with my Robin Hood. They use Elsa to exert my Robin Hood. They can take it out with a Fox. They can Zeus my Robin Hood, all sorts of stuff. So you can see why I struggled against it. 2 of the big Elsas. I feel like one of the big Elsas might be a little bit more safe. I think 2 might be a little bit on the greedy side of things. The Queen's Castle I would probably like to see 4 copies of Queen's Castle in there as well. But definitely a deck I'm interested in checking out. There's so many decks to test. But big shout out to everyone over in Scotland. Great community. Really, really good quality of player. Let's move on to some of the events over in America. We've got Kendall, who I think is No I'm Not, known in the community, who won the event on day 1. We're also going to be looking at their deck from day 2 in a moment. They didn't win day 2. Flynn Rider's in there, Chernobog's Brooms, 2 copies of the library, 4 Queen's Castle, 2 Crabs, 1 big CC, 3 Medusa. I like the look of this list a lot. I think Brooms, Chernobogs, and library. Brooms, Chernobogs for me, every single time I'm playing Amethyst, those cards are pretty much going in my deck without exception. Up next, we have day 2, which was a 2K. Lots of really, really good players known in the community from this one. And up first, we have R&B, who is a Golden Mickey winner. They have a build of their own on Amethyst Steel. They only have 2 copies of Fire the Cannons, which I think is more reasonable, but 1 copy of Baboom. 2 copies of Cogsworth. I have to say, guys, I don't really like this Cogsworth card that much. Is it just me? I'm not a huge fan, personally. 2 Smees, 3 Lawrence, 4 Foxes, 4 Rabbits, 4 Goats, as you'd expect, and 4 Friends. Then there's 2 Crabs, 4 Petes, 2 Libraries, 4 Castles, 3 Bells, and 2 Chempos. Now, if we compare this, let's maybe compare this quickly to the list that I played against in Scotland. A big thing missing from R&B's list is Elsa, which I think is outrageous. I think you've got to play 4 Elsas. To play no Elsas in this deck, I think is a huge mistake. This Elsa was absolutely incredible against me. Now, the rest of the deck is pretty similar. R&B also not playing Benja, which I also think that the Benja is a much better option in this metagame. I think it's really important. They are playing 4 castles, which I like, as well as 1 copy of the library, so more locations. I have to say, if I had to pick one of these decks, I would go for Sean's every single time without any hesitation. But I think a bit of a blend of both is something what I would settle on. As much as I do like this Bell card, I think that Elsa is just a much better bet than Bell, for sure. But GG's to R&B in the top 16. This is Kendall's list, who we just saw, No I'm Not, who finished first on the 1K from the day previous. Also in the top 8, we have Colby on Ruby Amethyst with Olaf, no Magic Brooms, but a few Chernobogs. B King is back in the mix. I feel like this card's being underrated. 2 Elsa I like to see. I also do like to see 1 Tremaine, 1 Big C. So I actually like the look of this list quite a bit. I would play something pretty similar. I would just be playing Brooms and Chernobogs times 4 of each. Only 3 Brawls is also interesting. Probably going to end up getting punished against Diablo, which is making a bit of a comeback. Having said that, Elsa does kind of help supplement that. Into the top 4, we have another player on Olaf's instead of the Brooms. Worth mentioning they're playing Olaf and not Mini. That's most likely because they have more Amethyst cards than Ruby cards. If you're playing more Amethyst cards than Ruby cards, it makes sense to play more Amethyst cards because then you can hide your ink a little bit better on turn 1, right? You ink something like a Crab, you play an Olaf, and then your opponent doesn't know that you're playing Ruby, although they could maybe guess. No copies of Teeth and Ambitions. I'm not really sure I believe in the Olafs over Magic Brooms. Okay, the argument is that Olaf doesn't get removed by something like a Storm Rage on, Fire the Cannons, Baboom. But who cares, honestly, your Flynn's getting removed by it anyway. I just think that Olaf is so much worse in every other matchup, and I would never go near it over a Magic Broom. I think Magic Broom is one of the best cards in the game, and Olaf is so mediocre. It's unbelievable. 3 Brawls, 2 Crabs, but that's just me. I like B King in there. I actually like 3 Elsa. 2 Tremaine, 2 Medusa is also pretty tasty. Only 3 Be Prepared and 1 Sisu. I like the look of the list quite a bit. Up next, we have into the top 3 or 3rd place, we have Sapphire Amethyst. making a bit of a show. And what a tasty list this one is. Churnabogs and Brooms, only 3 of each. Why not just play 4, mate? It's got to be worth it, in my opinion. It really, really does. T-Pose in there as a nice ramp option. 4 Crabs, as well as the 4 Mickeys. There's also 2 McDuck Manors, which is really, really interesting. The library's in there for the synergy with Churnabogs and Brooms, which makes me wonder even more why there's only 3 of each. That just screams out inefficiency to me, as my kind of deck building brain philosophy just tells me, in a similar way to I wouldn't build the deck in the same way that Earlmeister did, like, just play 4 of each, mate. Like, what is the reason not to? The reason is to fit more cards in, but the Brooms and Churnabogs are so efficient. I just love these cards. I really, really do. Only 3 Rabbits also seems a little bit off, if I'm honest, but it is allowing you maybe to fit in some more expensive uninkable cards. So Donald Duck is actually a card I like the look of a lot. When you play this character, you may put the top card of your deck into your Inkwell face down and exerted. Pretty surprised we haven't seen more of these Donald Ducks creeping up. I think in particular Sapphire Steel. And then the Genie is kind of the new fun card in this one, which I'm definitely going to be testing out as well. There's so many decks to test out. While this character is exerted, opposing characters can't ready at the start of their turn. So one thing you can do with this is you can get down Ursula, Quest of Ursula, and then the next turn play the Genie and exert... Sorry, as you quest... Before you Quest of Ursula, you play the Genie, and you can actually exert your own Genie, which while this character is exerted, opposing characters can't ready at the start of their turn. So that's a really cool little combo you can do to catch your opponent off guard. That becomes potentially even better in decks where you can shift Ursula, which this doesn't have any shift targets. There is, of course, the 2-drop Challenger Ursula, which isn't very good, and probably you're not going to be able to fit in the 7-cost uninkable Genie in an Emerald Amethyst deck. But that's definitely something to look out for. Madam Mim as a spicy inclusion, 1 Hades, 2 Mufasa, and 3 Elsa. Very, very tasty indeed. I like the look of the core of the deck. I would obviously just add an extra Churnabogs and a Broom. That would be my main thing I would want to do. In second place, we have the man, the myth, the legend that is DeCandio, who last week said if you're playing less than 4 Naveen's, you're doing it wrong. Well, they changed their mind because they have 3 Naveen's in this build. They are the person that really inspired the Lantern builds of Amber Steel that we've been seeing creeping up. He's always been a big fan of these cards. Only 3 copies of Storm Rage on is not something I'm a massive fan of. I would like to see 4 copies of that card pretty much every single time. 2 Bare Necessities. I actually like the look of the list that they had last week a little bit more, if I'm honest. But they've clearly adapted it slightly. I'm not sure exactly what the changes are. I think they weren't playing Grab Your Swords, to be fair, last week. So I suppose they've had to drop down a couple of other cards to fit in some Grab Your Swords. DeCandio's doing great. I really like the lists. Good job. But they lost to the #1 player from the weekend, or the #1 deck from the weekend in Tampa at a 2K in America. So a big event over in America. And it goes to Amber Emerald. And if you go back to watch my meta report video about a week after the set released, I put the top 2 decks of the set as my early prediction as Amber Steel Songs and Amber Emerald. And look at that. They matched up in the finals. Just shows you I do know a thing or two what I'm talking about sometimes. And this has not really many new cards from set 5. It has your Welcome, which is actually a great tool for this deck, being able to deal with locations a little bit more easily. Of course, your Welcome adds 2 cards to your opponent's hand, but you can swiftly discard those. If you sing your Welcome, you can then just play You Have Forgotten Me. You can play Southern Chills and things like that quite swiftly. 2 Hidden Coves to protect that Diablo. 3 copies of Painting the Roses Red. I still feel like the deck should be playing 4. I feel like only playing 3 Brunos is completely outrageous. I think you have to play 4 copies of the Bruno. It's just too efficient with Ariel and Prince John. But that's just me. Let me know if you agree or disagree. 3 Under the Sea is kind of the sweet spot. Keda's in there without the shift, which I also agree with. No Daisy Duck in the 1-cost slot or the 4-cost slot. I think both Daisies and Amber, the 1-cost that quests for 2, of course the set 5 one, and the Daisy Duck, which discards when you play it, I think are both great options. But Lyle Tiberius Rourke is an interesting but surprising addition to me. I think Lyle is great, but you've already got a lot of uninkables in that 3-cost slot with Diablo, Prince John, and Lyle. So I'm a little bit surprised to see that Lyle is kind of one of the flex slots in the deck when you could be playing something like Daisy Duck at 1, could be playing like a Merfolk at 1, you could be playing Daisy Duck at 4. Kind of surprised to see that it's Lyle that comes in there, but interesting to see nonetheless. Good job to Christian. I think this deck is great. Moving on, we have a tournament in Belgium with 48 players. Shout out to the community in Belgium. Let's look at the top 8. We've got Ruby, And we've got Amber. I think Ruby Amber definitely being a little bit underestimated so far this set. I think the Flynn Rider's a good way to go. Apparently they have 6 Sisus, which I don't think is possible. So I would assume there's a couple copies of the human Sisu in there. It's probably a bit of a mistake. Chernobog's in there. The Mulan. All right, I'm moving on. This deck's confusing me. Is this a real deck? All right, up next. Respect, though. Respect. Yeah, okay, moving on. Ruby Sapphire. Ruby Sapphire did really well in some of the tournaments we're going to be looking at in just a moment. And this one has lots of items in the mixer. 4 Tamatoas, 4 Ice Blocks, and 4 Human Sisu. It's actually very similar to how I would build it. 2 Hideaway, worth noting as well. And only 2 copies of Be Prepared. Only 1 Maui, but 4 of the big Sisus. I do think that Ruby Sapphire, it makes sense to invest in lots of the big Sisus, lots of Ice Blocks, and lots of Human Sisus. That's how I would go about it as well. We've got 1 drop on Steel Song with Pete's in there, 4 Naveen's. 0 to Hero also being rocked, which we did also see in Sweden. I think 3 0 to Hero is too many. Having watched the deck perform in Sweden, it got 3rd place. I think 1 or 2, 1, fine. I think 3 is going to cost you more than it's worth. No copies of Grab Your Swords. Sounds like a bit of a recipe for disaster. Disaster. Up next, we've got another Steel Song. This one with no 0 to Hero, but also with no Grab Your Swords, but has 3 of the Shift Cinderellas, only 3 Daisy Ducks in this one. We've got Sapphire Steel, the first time we've seen Sapphire Steel, and this is a very, 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 very tasty list. Wow, my goodness, there's a lot going on here to digest. Captain Hook and Smee are in there. There's some Baboons. There's a couple Pete's, couple Bells, couple Zeus. Stitch Team Underdog. When you play this character, you may deal 2 damage to chosen character. And I think Beast Tragic Hero making a great comeback. I do think this Stitch card is pretty good, potentially in Amethyst Steel, as a good bounce target, potentially. Very tasty card. Beast, I think it makes a lot of sense. Medusa's not in the meta as much as she has been in the past. Only 2 Cogsworth. Not sure I can subscribe to that. No Whole New World. Also controversial. 4 Grab Your Swords. Maurice, whenever this character quests, you may pay 2 ink less for the next item you play this turn. Whenever you play an item, you may draw a card. I mean, that's pretty tasty to draw with, obviously with Tamatoa. And the Sheriff of Nottingham, this is an amazing card. Quest for 4, 9 cost uninkable, but for each item you have in play, you pay 1 ink less to play this character. Sheriff of Nottingham can pop off in a big way. I played against it at Gamescom, and I was very, very impressed. So there's quite a lot of stuff I like about this deck. There's quite a lot of stuff I don't like about it so much. I don't like the lack of Whole New World, if I'm honest. I'm not convinced by the Maurice. Not actually convinced by the Stitch, as exciting as it is, but I definitely am convinced by the Sheriff of Nottingham, although 3 is a lot of copies. Into 3rd place, we have Ruby Sapphire. Vision of the Future is in there as a interesting option. It's not an item build. There's Kuzco, there's Mufasa, only 1 dragon. Very, very tasty looking list, actually, with lots of 1-offs and 2-offs. I have to say, this deck looks like it's going to get rolled by Hyper Aggro with no ice blocks. I think you're going to really struggle against that, but if you dodge the Hyper Aggro, it's probably pretty good. Steel Songs finished in 2nd. No lanterns to be seen here. 2 Grab Your Swords. The Queen is in this one with Naveen. Pete, Lawrence round it out. But 1st place in Belgium, we do have Bob de Jong playing Ruby Sapphire. Ruby Chromacon's in there, which is a great card. There's 3 Ice Blocks, 3 Sisus, 3 How Far I'll Goes, and 4 T-Pos. So not going the item route, but no Be Prepared at all. Favouring the little Sisu, the big Sisu, and some Ice Blocks. Medusa as well. Makes sense if you're heavy on Ice Blocks. They're also heavy on Maleficence. And I actually really like the look of this list. This looks like a really solid build. I like it quite a bit. Only 2 1-jumps, but obviously you've got T-Po in there instead. All right, up next, we've got another 1K, which happened over in the States. And if you look at the lists, a lot of them are similar ink colors to what we've already been looking at. So I just wanted to highlight the winning deck, Ruby and Amethyst by Omar. Let's have a gander. Chernobogs and Rafiki as the 1-drops. Flynn's in there. Only 3 Brawls, which I think is reasonable. The Library, Be King, 3 copies. That looks nice. 2 Elsa. Only 3 Maui. Really? Really? Is that what we're doing now? We're only playing 3 Mauis? I'm not sure I can support that. I mean, I will say Elsa does compete for value with Maui, so maybe there's an argument to do so. Let me know what you think. And this is a tasty list. Only 3 Be Prepareds. Only... well, no big Sisus. Definitely a little bit unorthodox compared to some of the other lists we've been seeing. But I do think it makes sense to have a bit of a lower curve. I would personally want to see more brooms and more China bogs, as I'm sure you guys would know. All right, on to arguably, well, not arguably, the biggest tournament of the weekend. We saved the best till last. I want to give a shout out to the French community. If I had to make a prediction right now and say, what nationality will the player that wins the World Championships be? While like North America, USA might be the most obvious pick, I'm going to go France. I think the French have got some amazing, amazing players. Many, many French players have done really well at Disney Lorcana challenges. In fact, I believe the last 2 Lorcana challenges in Europe had players from France winning them. So big shout out to the French community, crazy community over there. And I actually think there's a chance we might be able to watch the finals as a video coming soon. As a friend of mine, Katal, I believe, was casting this one and has given me permission to commentate over the footage. So we'll have the finals from this tournament, I believe, on the channel in the coming days. So look out for that. Top 16, we're going to look at the top 8. I just wanted to highlight this one from the top 16 because it's another Chief Bogo Emerald Steel deck. A deck I'm really, really interested in. No, there is Clarabelle. I was going to say, I'd be surprised. I think 4 Clarabelle to me seems like the way to go, but I love the look of Chief Bogo. I might even build this deck today, you know, because it looks really, really exciting. I love the idea of Morph as well. Morph Tinkerbell. Only 3 Ursula. I mean, come on. You've got to play 4 Ursulas, mate. I think we all know that. But it's really, really tasty. There's Pete's in there, Robin's Bow. No Beast Relentless, though. But playing this like Robin Hood 2-drop, I think this Robin Hood 2-drop is absolutely terrible. I'm sorry. I really don't like it. When you play this character, if an opponent has a damage character in play, game 1 lore. I don't think that's great. I don't think that's great at all. But I like the look of the rest of the deck. There's a few things I would certainly change. I'm not sure Robin's Bow is quite worth it. I'm also not convinced I like the Diablo that much. I'm not a huge Diablo believer. Having said that, Diablo in Steel is very good because it can sing Storm Rage on, it can sing Strength. So that is a huge benefit to it. I'm pretty interested in Ursula Deceiver of All, Prince John, Sudden Chills maybe, and maybe you could still play Diablo with that kind of package. But I really, really like the idea of Morph. I really like the idea of Chief Bogo, Clarabelle, Tinkerbell, Beast. I think the deck's got a lot of legs. I'm going to be trying it soon. I think Emerald's great. I really, really like Emerald, this set. We've got into the top 8, Amber and Steel. This one's on 4 Naveen's. 1, I'll find them. I flatten him. You don't see that every day. 1 was Greatest Criminal Mind, despite No the Queen, but that's definitely going to be good against a lot of the Ruby and Sapphire decks. You can hit things like Tamatoa, you can hit Maleficence, all sorts. 1 Aerial Sonic Warrior in there is pretty tasty as well. Overall, this looks like a pretty nice list. I'm not convinced by I'll find them, I'll flatten them, mind you. But you could go worse to just include it as a one-off as an inkable song. Up next, also in the top 8, we have 3 Lanterns. This looks similar to the build that the Candio played with 4 Naveens and no Grab Your Swords. Still in the top 8, Ruby and Sapphire. We got this 3-cost human Sisu with 4 ice blocks and 4 giant Sisus, 3 Medusas, 1 B prep. Lots of top end in this one with the 4 Maleficent monstrous dragons as well. Only 2 brawls. I actually do like the concept of cutting brawls in these Ruby Sapphire decks with there being less Diablos, and also you can answer Diablo with ice block and little human Sisu. 2 Vision of the Future, 3 Develop Your Brain. Lots of consistency in this one, as well as 2 copies of Hideaway to deal with locations. I like the look of this list quite a lot. This list looks really tasty to me. Shout out to Killian. Up next, we have Didic. Sorry if I've butchered your name there, mate. Also on Ruby Sapphire, not playing item heavy build, but still with Icebox, Human Sisu. 2 Be Prepared, only 3 Maleficent Monstrous Dragons, only 3 Mauis. They're on How Far I'll Go, which is a great card. And also on Vision for the Future and Develop Your Brain. Pretty similar looking list. Into the top 4, we have Sapphire Steel with an incredibly strong performance. This one's on a whole new world, but only 3, but also playing 2 copies of the Blue Fassa, which is really, really tasty. In my experience, the best amount of Mufasas to play is 1, simply because when you get 2 down at the same time, they can be a bit clunky, but it is a great card. Fire the Cannons, there's 3 copies of that. There's only 3 Smees. Admittedly, there is now Tipo in the mixer. There's Pete there as well as Zeus. I like the look of this list quite a bit. I would probably be tempted to just drop down a Mufasa and maybe just play like 4 Tamatoa, for example, and a 4th Whole New World maybe, but this just looks like a really, really nice list, and I think Sapphire Steel is being underrated quite significantly, so good job to Monteliet. Sebastian, good job. Also in the top 4, we have more Amethyst Sapphire, kind of proving me wrong, because I did put it quite low down in my predictions as how good it would be. I think I was also probably overestimating how good Sapphire Emerald is, because this deck has a horrific matchup into Sapphire Emerald, I think. But Sapphire Emerald, nowhere to be seen as it stands. Chanabog's Followers and Cogsworth in at 1. Tipo to ramp. No 1-jumper heads, but only 3 Mickeys, which is kind of surprising when it can sing Friends on the other side. No 5-cost Donalds, but there are some Bells in there. There's some Cogsworth and 4 Elsas, which I like to see. I think Elsa's great. 2 Cusco, 2 Yzma, 2 Hades, 3 Elsa, which can shift on to the 4 copies of the other Elsa, and 2 Blue Fassas as well. Really awesome. I still need to check this color combo out. Into the top 2, we have Bonavito, Johan, sorry for butchering your name, on Chicha in Ruby Sapphire. Chicha, an amazing card, which was we're all very excited about coming into the set. Hasn't really quite popped off as much as we would have liked or predicted, but maybe a card to really revisit and see if it can brute force its way into some decks, giving you some potential card draw. Could be really, really nice. T-Pose in there. Ice Block, Human Sisu also. Scar makes an appearance as a one-off and also playing this 5-cost Donald Duck, despite not having any good songs to sing with it. Just as an inkable card, which gains you some ramp. Can quest for 2. Decent stats. I can see it. I can absolutely see it. But the tournament winner in France was Hoyen Du Hay on Ruby Sapphire Classic, as they've called it. 4 Ice Blocks, 3 Human Sisus, 4 Giant Sisus. That's how I would go about it as well. 3 Dragons, 1 B Prep, 3 Medusa, no Tremaines, 2 Hellfire Goes, 2 Brawls. Pretty tasty. No Develop Your Brains. Playing the 6-cost Cusco over the... Is it called Hideaway, the card, the 2-cost one? Yeah. So playing Cusco over Hideaway. Very, very spacey. Ruby Sapphire with a really good showing this weekend. Big shout out to all the tournament organizers. Big shout out to all the players. Remember, if I roasted your deck and said I didn't like it, what do I know? Listen, I'm just here to give you my honest opinions. That's what the people want. I appreciate you all watching this far into the video. Big shout out to Card Market for sponsoring today's video. Best place to buy singles. Check them out. Cheers. See you. Bye.